Learning your multiplication facts isn't about one big lesson or isn't about committing 2-3 weeks to it in the curriculum. It's about a lot of small routines that are repeated consistently throughout the week and over time.
And we know the benefit of knowing their times tables, the patterns behind it, and how it's interlinked with so many maths concepts. So you find some games that your students love, whatever it might be.
I had them locked in the car so they couldn't move, and she would just fire multiplication questions at them. And she said, I hated it. I felt under so much pressure. And then my mother-in-law says, it's the only way I could get them to practice them. So we're going to come up with some more fun ways.
Rainbow Sky Creations acknowledges the traditional owners of the land we have recorded this podcast on, the Dharawal and Whadjuk Noongar people. We pay our respects to their elders past and present and extend that respect to all Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander cultures.
Welcome back to Rainbow Skies for Teachers. I'm Ashley.
And I'm Alicia.
And we're sitting here in person today recording this episode. And I'm glad we are because it's a goodie.
It is. It's a lovely time to get together, have a chit chat, actually look in each other's eyes without it being through a computer screen. How romantic.
I have had a few questions over the years on Instagram asking if we're a couple. Oh. And I'm like, no, we're not. We're both married to men, and Alicia lives in Perth and I live in Sydney. So it would be a very long distance relationship if we were romantically involved.
I mean, this is probably the first time in a very long time that we've seen each other twice in a year.
Oh, I know.
Yeah.
Usually we don't see each other for long periods of time.
Yeah. So it would have been doomed from the start.
Anyway, enough chit chat. Today we're going to talk about a topic, and it's off the back of somebody telling me something about their child. So I have a dear friend that I met up for coffee the other day. Her child has just gone into year 5, and the grade 5 teacher, I'm not throwing shade at this teacher, they're just doing the best that they can.
Absolutely.
But it's the premise of the idea. Said that the children need to know all of their times tables, so every multiplication fact, off the top of their head really, really quick, right? Ooh. Her child struggles with this a little bit, and she's like, we're having so much trouble at home in order for her to learn these times tables. Like, some of them she knows, some of them she doesn't, but we're really struggling. She was actually asking me for ways that she could support her at home, and we're going to share some of those ways today.
Yeah.
But what I did say to her was that it's unrealistic of this teacher to ask a year 5 student to be able to pull off the times tables off the top of their head for every single one without them having any thinking time. Like I said to her, could you say to her, what's 5 times 6? And she work out a strategy in her head and then answer. And she said, well, yes, she can do that. But the teacher said that they need them like instantly. And yes, knowing them instantly is important. But we can't do that without consistent times table practice over a long period of time.
Absolutely. And understanding why it's the answer that it is.
Yes. I would be surprised if the children in the class could do that by the end of the year in year 5. Like if it's a male teacher, if he has every single child doing that. So we want to share today some of these strategies that perhaps this teacher could use or anyone else out there to really come up with just little tiny things that could help move the needle forward with your kids when it comes to learning their times tables. Because we can't just say go and learn them.
No, you've got to give them the tools to be able to learn them, and also the motivation and the drive to want to learn them.
Absolutely. My sister-in-law still to this day, she's the same age as me, so 41, and she still to this day says, I hated going to school where my mum would drive us to school. They'd drive in at like a 20-minute drive. And the mum, she said, I had them locked in. This is my mother-in-law. I had them locked in the car so they couldn't move, and she would just fire multiplication questions at them. And she said, I hated it. I felt under so much pressure. And then my mother-in-law says, it's the only way I could get them to practice them. So we're going to come up with some more fun ways other than locking kids in cars and firing questions at them.
Yep.
All right.
Hit us up with the first one, Ash.
Okay. The first one is actually something that you came up with many years ago to help your students with this exact problem. And it is our speedy numbers. Now, with the speedy numbers, it's really great because you can differentiate them. You print out little booklets. They have a mix of different times table questions, but you will give some kids in your class 2 times, some kids in your class 7 and 8, some kids in your class 11 and 12, depending on where they're up to. You can have a timer or
Yeah.
they could time themselves. So it doesn't have to be a timed test. I was actually talking to a friend the other day whose child's in year 3 and they do a timed test for homework. And she said, my child finds it really overwhelming because she can't think of the things. So if your kids are feeling overwhelming with the timing, take that part away.
Yeah, absolutely. Don't add extra pressure when you don't need to.
But this can just be a couple of minutes that they do it. And they're just working on building their own PB.
Yes, that was one of the motivations behind it, was that I guess as well students kind of didn't feel like they were making the gains that they should be making. So even with that speedy number booklet, they've got this evidence to see how they're progressing and how they're getting better at times tables, or even when it's like 2 times something equals 10, what would it be? So we do add some 2 varieties and difficulties with missing numbers for them to be able to challenge themselves. But my students would ask for them all the time. We're doing our speedy number booklet.
You know, when your students are asking for them, they're a winner.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also with the speedy numbers, another good little strategy off the back of this is if they get one wrong, or whatever ones that they're getting wrong or they can't answer, if they're skipping them, I always say to my kids, highlight 2 or 3, never more than 3 different questions that you're getting wrong or that you really don't know, and then work on those 3 throughout the week. So next week when we do the speedy numbers, those 3 are going to become automatic for you, and it's just like a tiny little bite size.
Yep. One, moving that goalpost that little bit.
Yes, I'm doing that with my daughter at the moment. She keeps getting her 11 times wrong, which I think is a bit crazy because they're the easiest ones. But we're working on 11 times 4 and 11 times 5 this week.
Oh, great. She's going to be nailing it by the end of the week.
She totally is. All right, sex idea.
That romantic talk.
All right, next idea. What have we got?
It's one that we talk about. There's a reason we talk about it a lot, because it does move the needle forward, and it's having multiplication games incorporated in your maths groups. Or like for me, I would always make sure that I would be having a game that would be practicing a concept that I need students to be getting good at. And we know the benefit of knowing their times tables, the patterns behind it, and how it's interlinked with so many maths concepts. So you find some games that your students love, whatever it might be. I'm looking at one here, that multiplication battleship. It's one of our older games from one of our hands-on maths packs, but it's a different take on battleships. And in all honesty, the kids play it for a long time. They have quite a lot of stamina when playing this game, or playing it. I used to do it with my year 3s and my year 4 students. And you can have it so that they're really applying their times table skills across, 0 through to the 10 times tables. But incorporating games that students are invested in are great. And I think there are so many types of games that you can add that variety element and give them some autonomy, and being like, hey, you've got a choice of these 4 games this week to pick from to improve your multiplication skills. And guess what? You can choose the times table you want to focus on. So your daughter could get the 11 timetables and work on that.
Absolutely. Well, we got out our maths games for her to practice. We locked in 11, and then she's flipping over cards. 11 times 6, 11 times 0, 11 times 4, 11 times 9. And that was really getting that automaticity up for her. But we've also got the flip it games, very similar to our games. Actually, yesterday I was working on our new version 4, and I came up with another great multiplication game using cards. So that's to come. But you know what other game is really great for learning times tables? Dots and boxes. Your favourite.
Yes, my favourite indeed. And so you've got to have a little bit of strategy with this game too, because while they're practicing their times tables, they're trying to get the most number of boxes by connecting 4 sides. So if you've got some little strategists in your classroom, you're going to see them loving playing this game, because 1, they're going to be nailing their times tables, and 2, they're going to be trying to be the best at covering the largest area in that game.
100%. So we'll link those games. We've got flip it multiplication games. We've got multiplication games that include cards. We've got the dots and boxes and the battleships. So I will make sure that all of those are linked in the show notes. So you can just grab and go. All right. So next up is fast finishes. Having multiplication games as fast finisher activities, especially in your grade 3 and 4 classrooms, where we really want them to start becoming really familiar with these multiplication facts.
Yes. And look, adding a bit of variety, like a game could be that they're completing a puzzle where they've got the times table, a visual of an array, and the division question. You know, in terms of that inverse of multiplication and division, I feel like a bit of them should be taught side by side. Once they have that multiplication concept, applying the division of that and showing them how it's all connected is so important.
Yeah. Dice games?
Yes.
To practice timetables, I know we've got a whole pack of different games that you can use with dice, and kids are rolling dice and then covering up numbers, or spinner games.
Absolutely. And what if you might find that you have students who are really great at the speedy numbers. They can see it, oh, that's 7 times 5, but maybe they're not so great with the auditory side of it. So we've also got the multiplication who is a game where instead of faces, it's answers to the times tables, and they're turning over cards and having to hear their partner say, what is 7 times 5? And like, oh, I don't have the visual, I've got to listen to it. Okay, that's 35. So giving them games that challenge different senses is important too.
Yeah, I think we can really implement student voice in this idea of having games for them to play that are fast finisher too. Like maybe you have those dots and boxes that you're using in your maths rotations, or your flip it games, or the guess who multiplication games, and you say, okay, you can go and play a maths game if you finish this task, and then they can go and choose what they like. It also kind of gives you a bit of a clue as a teacher about what they're choosing and what they like too, which is great data for your head, because you know you can get buy-in with them.
Oh, absolutely. And like you said, you had your friend coming to ask you for their daughter, and how many times would you have a parent saying, I feel like I need some games at home? They're not saying games, or how do I make them better at multiplication? This is where you pull out and go, your kid's been really loving this flipper game. Why don't you got a pack of cards at home? Great. Here, take this template.
Yeah.
It allows that ease of transition between working together with home and school.
Definitely. I know I spoke about my friend at the beginning. Her daughter was in year 5, but I actually remember just last week I had another friend whose child's in year 3 who didn't like the time tests. I printed off a whole heap of flip it games and dropped them at their front door, and I said, listen, play with these. They're great. She's still going to learn what she needs to learn.
Yeah. But
she can play on her own. She can play with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Look at you, saving the day.
I know. Well, it's so hard too for parents that they don't know. Like they need to use us as teachers as guides. So even as teachers, if we've got something that you know a student likes, why not send it home?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
All right, the next one's a little bit of a different idea, and it's about brain breaks. So including times tables in the brain breaks that you might have throughout the day. So we're doing a lesson, you decide, okay, let's have a brain break, and it might be a movement brain break based on some times tables. So for example, get into groups of 2 times 3, and the kids have to think, oh, that's 6, and then they get into groups of 6.
That it was exactly what I was going to say.
Oh, was it? I stole your idea.
Like one I love to play was a game of buzz. So you'd be like, all right, we're doing the 5 times table, so we have to buzz on every multiple of 5.
Oh, I thought you meant buzz off hairy legs.
Oh, no, I don't know this one.
I think you do. You know, so you stand in a circle and then you're doing 5 time tables. So everyone says one word, 5, next person times, next person 1 equals 5.
No.
And then then the next person says buzz off, and either that person goes down, or if you're a teacher that uses hairy legs, they say buzz off hairy legs, and then that person sits down, and then it's 5 times 2 is 10. Buzz off hairy legs until you only have one person left.
No, ours is just to go 1, 2, 3, 4. Each student's saying a number, and then if it's 5, you have to say buzz. But if you don't, you sit down.
Oh, so that's kind of like the skip counting-ish version.
Yes.
Both good games.
They are.
There you go.
Off hairy legs. So adding in a quick break is great for everyone. And as you heard, we had a bit of a laugh. Kids have a bit of a laugh. Resets our brains, our chemicals, and we're ready to go on to whatever the next task may be on the timetable.
Definitely. Okay, so our next strategy is having a times table of the week. So choosing one table to focus on, and then you might have that as your warm-up for each of your maths lessons each day. You might have your games that are focusing on that. You might just go, okay, let's skip count. We're skip counting by 2s because we're working on our 2 times tables, or we're skip counting by 7s because we're working on our 7 times tables. So just bring it to the forefront, because I know that there's some learners out there that want to challenge themselves, but there's some learners out there that want to stay safe too.
Yeah, and I think you're there going, oh, well, look, I'm kind of limited. Like, once I get 2 through to 12, so it's like, why not mix it up and do the 100 times tables for the week and see how they're seeing the patterns between the 10s and the 100s.
Yeah.
And then maybe like the 1000s times timetable. So don't limit yourself to be like, I've just got to teach them 1, 2, 3, or, up to 12. You're going to have students and yourselves who might want to stretch and just see where their mathematical thinking is at.
Yeah. This kind of links in with our final idea, and that is to include a 2-minute daily warm-up that involves that quick recall. So you might use that times table of the week, or you might not.
No, you might play a game of like around the world where your students stand in a circle or a semicircle and you do a quick fire off. Or you do something like shoot the sheriff. I don't know if that's politically correct now.
I don't think it is.
Apologies, everyone. I'm old.
But you could adapt that game.
I don't know. You could do a buzz-off version.
You could. I don't think buzz off hairy legs is probably very politically correct either. I don't think we can say people have hairy legs, but you know what we mean. Like, you can do little fun games as your 2-minute daily warm-up. You could just do some skip counting as a 2-minute daily warm-up.
Absolutely.
One of the things we love doing, and we haven't spoken about this in so long,
Tell me.
was our skip counting races where you say to the kids,
yes.
okay, you've got
The number 3, you got to skip count now by 5.
yes.
And so that's 3, 8, 13, 18, and they got to see the pattern.
Yeah.
Our kids know 5, 10, 15, but what happens when it's 1, 6, 11, 16? And I think that's the thing about maths, right? It's a pattern. There's what... I don't know, maybe I live with a mathematician. I nerd out a bit on this every now and then. But yeah, skip counting races, they're great.
They are great. I think maths as a patterns is a really good way to look at it. If kids get overwhelmed, like my middle child, she gets very overwhelmed with her maths and she thinks she's not very good at it, but she's really artistic.
Yeah.
And I say math is just a pattern, and she understands patterns. Like, she gets that. She thinks she's good at that.
Yeah.
So it's just making those connections. And it's
That's
true,
right.
especially with times tables. They really are patterns.
Mm-hmm. So if you've been struggling with a way to make multiplication consistent in your classroom, we hope this episode has helped. So
Yeah.
Ash is going to give us a quick recap on the suggestions that could help transform those little mathematicians' fluidity in their times tables.
Yeah. So number 1, we had a weekly speedy number activity. We don't like to call it a test because no kids like a test.
No.
So speedy numbers, we have got lots of those, so you can just print and go. You don't need to take a lot of time to prepare them. We'll make sure they're linked in the show notes. Number 2 was include multiplication games in your rotations, in your centers, in your maths lessons. Again, we mentioned a whole heap of them. We'll make sure they're included in the show notes. Having fast finisher activities that are multiplication focused. You can just reuse some of those games, or you might want to introduce other ones. Brain breaks that include times table or multiplication recall is a really good one. Having a times table or a multiplication set of tables a week to practice on, something to focus on. And finally, doing a daily 2-minute warm-up that really asks them to recall some of those multiplication facts. You might have flashcards, you might have skip counting, you might play a game. Just remember, overall, consistency is the key. Learning your multiplication facts isn't about one big lesson, or isn't about committing 2-3 weeks to it in the curriculum. It's about a lot of small routines that are repeated consistently throughout the week and over time. And that's how my friend's child in Year 5 is going to learn her times tables. It's over the entire year. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yes, and for some kids it's over the entire years.
Yes.
You know, there's a reason we are building on top of those foundations. We're building that house brick by brick. So everything that we have shared in terms of free games, activities, all linked to the show notes. So go on there, have a read, download, and get access to some games that we promise will have your kids wanting to learn their times tables.
Yes, and if you do find a game or an activity that you've used, let us know if your kids love it. Like, we love hearing from teachers. We just got a message the other day on Instagram about a teacher who is a long-time teacher, but she listens to the podcast and she loves it so much. So we appreciate all of you out there that are choosing to listen to us. And if you find things that you love, let us know. We love hearing from you.
Absolutely. And until next time, there are rainbows ahead, my friend.
And together, we're unstoppable.
Thanks for choosing to listen to Rainbow Skies for Teachers, the go-to show dedicated to teachers who want to make a big difference in education.
If you enjoyed the episode, please leave us a 5-star review or share the episode with a friend. Because together we're
Unstoppable.